He was the man who brought elegance, depth, and intelligence to Hollywood's golden age, a British gentleman whose charm was as timeless as his tragic end. This is the life story of Leslie Howard, the actor who lived with grace and died a hero.
Woman, cease this detestable boo-hooing instantly.
I've a right to be here if I like, same as you.
A woman who utters such depressing and disgusting sounds has no right to be anywhere.
Oh,
Remember that you're a human being with a soul, and the divine gift of articulate speech, and that your language is the language of Milton, Shakespeare, and the Bible. Don't sit there crooning like a bilious pigeon.
Ow!
Ow.
Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to Sajjad Classic for more untold stories of cinema's golden legends. Leslie Howard Steiner was born on April 3, 1893 in London, England, to a Hungarian Jewish father, Ferdinand Steiner, and an English mother, Lillian Howard. His father had emigrated from Hungary to build a new life in Britain, bringing with him a sense of discipline and ambition, while his mother, gentle and artistic, nurtured young Leslie's imagination. The blend of his parents' worlds, one practical, one poetic, shaped the quiet, introspective boy who would later captivate audiences with his intelligence and subtle charm. Growing up in a comfortable middle-class home, Leslie was surrounded by books, music, and the kind of old-fashioned manners that defined Edwardian England. He attended Dulwich College, one of London's respected schools, where his love for literature, poetry, and the stage began to take root. Teachers noticed his thoughtful nature and elegant speech, but few could have predicted that this shy boy would one day become one of Britain's most distinguished actors. However, the peaceful rhythm of his early life was soon shattered by the outbreak of World War I in 1914. Like many young men of his generation, Leslie felt the call of duty and enlisted in the British Army. The reality he encountered was far from the romantic notions of heroism that had filled the newspapers. The trenches were cold, chaotic, and merciless. Howard witnessed death at close quarters, saw friends fall beside him, and endured the endless noise of artillery that left both body and mind scarred. The psychological toll was immense. He was eventually diagnosed with shell shock, what we now know as post-traumatic stress disorder, and was discharged from service. It was during his recovery, away from the front lines, that his life took a decisive turn. Doctors advised him to engage in something gentle and creative to rebuild his mental strength. He began reading plays, attending small local productions, and soon found solace in the world of theater. Acting became not just an escape, but a form of healing, a way to rediscover humanity after witnessing its darkest side. From the trauma of war emerged a new purpose. The quiet, reflective man who had once fought in muddy trenches now stepped onto the stage, carrying with him a depth of emotion that audiences could feel, even when he barely spoke. That inner gravity, born from pain and recovery, would become the essence of Leslie Howard's screen presence in the years to come. After finding comfort and purpose in the world of acting, Leslie Howard began performing in London's West End during the early 1920s, a period when the city's theatre scene was thriving, filled with grand productions, passionate performers, and audiences hungry for art that reflected the rapidly changing world after the Great War. At first, Howard was just another young actor trying to make his mark among hundreds. But there was something quietly magnetic about him, a presence that didn't shout for attention but drew it naturally. On stage, he carried himself with a kind of intellectual grace, a mixture of quiet confidence and vulnerability that audiences found irresistible. Most actors of his generation came from the old school of performance, grand gestures, booming voices, and exaggerated emotions meant to reach the last row of the theater. But Leslie Howard was different. His acting was restrained, thoughtful, and deeply human. He didn't perform feelings, he understood them, letting emotions flicker across his face in the subtlest of ways. It was this honesty that made him stand out. Critics began to notice that his characters felt real, even when the scripts were melodramatic. He had a scholar's mind and an artist's sensitivity, a combination that allowed him to interpret roles with remarkable depth. Whether playing a romantic lead, a conflicted soul, or a man caught between duty and desire, Howard gave every role a sense of quiet intelligence. Directors began to appreciate his control and discipline, and fellow actors admired how effortlessly he could hold an audience's attention without ever raising his voice. By the mid-1920s, Howard had earned a reputation as one of the most sophisticated leading men in London theatre, not because he demanded the spotlight, but because he mastered the art of simplicity. In an age of excess, his subtlety became his power. As Leslie Howard's reputation grew in London's theatre circles, it was only natural that filmmakers began to take notice. The British film industry in the early 1920s was still in its infancy, yet ambitious in its search for new talent. Producers saw in Howard the refined face of a modern English gentleman, poised, intelligent, and quietly expressive. In 1920, he made his film debut in The Heroine of Mons, a silent war drama. Ironically, his first screen role echoed the very trauma he had endured in real life, the war. But the transition from stage to screen proved to be a challenge. Silent films demanded bold gestures, exaggerated expressions, and theatrical body language, all designed to compensate for the absence of sound. Howard, however, was the complete opposite. His performances thrived on subtle glances, quiet pauses, and emotional restraint, qualities that simply didn't translate well to silent cinema. Directors often found him too still, while camera operators complained that his expressions were barely visible on film. For a time, it seemed he was out of step with what cinema demanded. Yet even in those early struggles, Howard refused to abandon his natural style. He believed that real emotion didn't need to be shouted, it only needed to be felt. His earliest films didn't bring fame or fortune. He appeared in small, sometimes forgettable projects, learning as he went along, slowly adapting to the camera's demands. He studied how light, shadow, and silence could enhance a performance, and he began to refine his art for this new medium. Unlike many stage actors who treated film as a lesser art, Howard approached it as a different kind of poetry, one that required precision and inner stillness. And when opportunity finally knocked from across the Atlantic, Leslie Howard was ready. Broadway was calling, and America would soon discover what Britain already knew, that Leslie Howard wasn't just another actor. He was a thinker, a craftsman, and a man whose quiet brilliance would soon light up both stage and screen. When Leslie Howard arrived in New York, the theater scene there was alive with energy and opportunity. Broadway was the beating heart of American culture in the 1920s, a place where talent, ambition, and charm could turn a name into legend. For Howard, it was a chance to start fresh, far from the limits of the silent British film industry that hadn't yet understood his kind of artistry. Then came Berkeley Square, the play that would define his career. Premiering in 1929, it told the story of a modern man who mysteriously finds himself transported to the 18th century, caught between two worlds and two loves. The role seemed written for Leslie Howard. His quiet introspection and nostalgic elegance captured the essence of a man out of time. Audiences were enchanted by the melancholy grace he brought to the part, a performance so hauntingly beautiful that it became one of the defining moments of his life. Critics called him the thinking man's romantic hero. Berkeley Square ran successfully and turned Howard into an international star, earning him the respect of both audiences and peers. Hollywood soon came knocking, not for another face, but for a man who could bring sophistication and emotional depth to the screen. When Leslie Howard finally stepped into Hollywood, he did so not with the loud ambition of a newcomer, but with the calm assurance of a man who knew exactly who he was. By the early 1930s, he had already built a reputation as an actor of intelligence and grace, someone who brought thoughtfulness to every role. It didn't take long for Hollywood to recognize that they had found something rare. Let's now take a deeper look into Leslie Howard's unforgettable journey through film, the era when his quiet brilliance and refined artistry lit up some of the greatest movies of Hollywood's golden age. Outward Bound, 1930.
Scrubby, tell me one thing now. Anything I can, sir? Where are we sailing for? Heaven, sir. And hell, too. It's the same place, you see.
Leslie Howard began his sound film career with Outward Bound, reprising the role that had made him a Broadway sensation. The story follows a group of passengers on a mysterious ship, slowly realizing they are all dead and on their way to judgment. Howard played Henry, a man caught between despair and self-discovery. His calm delivery and quiet dignity gave the film a haunting beauty. Even in this early talkie, Howard proved that he didn't need dramatic flourishes, just a thoughtful gaze and a well-timed pause to move an audience. 5 and 10, 1931.
I believed your promise this evening. I believed everything you told me. I believed I was the one man for the tower building. But I didn't believe you wanted to marry me just to crash the gate.
Barry.
Everyone in the world knew the truth but me.
Barry, please try to understand.
Oh, I understand only too well. I'm sorry, Jennifer, but you and I don't seem to speak the same language.
Oh, Barry, you don't mean that.
Yes, I do. You're just a cheap, rich girl.
In 5 and 10, Howard starred opposite Marion Davies in a touching story about love across social classes. He played Barry Rhodes, a man whose sensitivity and refinement contrasted beautifully with the glittering world of wealth and privilege around him. Though the film wasn't a major hit, critics admired Howard's ability to bring genuine depth to what could have been a routine romantic drama. It showed Hollywood that he wasn't just an English gentleman. He was a man capable of carrying emotional truth in any role. The Animal Kingdom, 1932.
For a long time I've known intimately, a girl who's been very important to me.
Yes?
Daisy's done more for me than anyone in this world. She's the best friend I've got. I believe she always will be. I'd hate terribly to lose her. It's been a queer sort of arrangement. Well, no arrangement at all, really. There's never been any idea of marriage between us.
In The Animal Kingdom, Leslie Howard delivered one of his finest early Hollywood performances as Tom Collier, a man caught between two worlds. The carefree sincerity of his bohemian lover, played beautifully by Anne Harding, and the shallow elegance of his socially ambitious wife. It was a role that fit Howard perfectly, both morally and emotionally. His quiet integrity, his struggle to stay honest in a world obsessed with appearances, it all mirrored his own character in real life. His scenes with Anne Harding carried a delicate tenderness, filled with emotional restraint and unspoken longing. Howard never forced the drama. He let it unfold through small gestures, glances, and pauses that revealed the turmoil within. Critics praised his performance for its intelligence, grace, and remarkable truthfulness. The New York Times admired how Howard turned inner conflict into art, making stillness as expressive as dialogue. Trade journals hailed him as Hollywood's gentleman actor, refined yet deeply human. Reserved for Ladies, 1932. Original title, Service for Ladies. In this delightful British romantic comedy, Leslie Howard shone as Max Tracy, a suave and courteous hotel waiter who is accidentally mistaken for a prince. What followed was a light-hearted tale of mistaken identity, flirtation, and social satire. The kind of story tailor-made for Howard's effortless charm and refinement. He played the role with graceful wit and understated humor, making Max both dignified and endearing. Howard's performance proved that sophistication didn't have to mean stiffness. His warmth and playful charm lit up the screen. Critics praised him for his impeccable timing and effortless elegance. The London Evening Standard called his portrayal a masterclass in polished comedy, while Picture Goer Weekly noted that Howard makes even the simplest lines sparkle with intelligence. Though the film was a light romantic romp, It served as an early reminder of Howard's versatility, that beneath his intellectual aura was a natural comedian who could win hearts just as easily with a smile as with a stirring monologue. Captured, 1933.
Well, what would you suggest?
Release them from that cellar, sir. Let them build small huts to live in. 4 or 5 men to a hut. Give them a chance to organize teams and games. Anything to keep their minds occupied.
You liar.
Captured took Howard back to the emotional terrain of World War I, a subject close to his heart. He portrayed Captain Fred Allison, a British officer imprisoned in a German camp. The film's portrayal of loyalty, betrayal, and moral struggle was intense, and Howard's performance carried the quiet pain of a man who had truly seen war. His authenticity made the story feel deeply personal, almost as if he were exorcising ghosts from his own past. Berkeley Square, 1933.
I believe that when I go back to my house in Berkeley Square at 5:30 tonight, I shall walk straight into the 18th century and meet the people living there. Oh, Helen, try to understand. I come to you from somewhere else. That other world.
One of Leslie Howard's most poetic and defining roles came with Berkeley Square, a hauntingly beautiful fantasy drama where he played Peter Standish, a modern man who mysteriously slips back into the 18th century. The story was rooted in nostalgia and the aching passage of time, themes that seemed to echo Howard's own reflective nature. Howard portrayed Standish not as a man bewildered by time travel, but as one enchanted and tormented by it. His quiet wonder, restrained emotions, and subtle melancholy created a performance that was both ethereal and deeply human. You could see it in his eyes, that distant longing for a world just out of reach. The film itself was delicate and atmospheric, filled with candlelit rooms, wistful silences, and an undercurrent of yearning. Howard's performance anchored the fantasy and emotion, making audiences feel the heartbreak of loving across centuries. Critics were effusive in their praise. The New York Times hailed his portrayal as a rare fusion of intellect and emotion, a performance that haunts long after the final scene. Variety called it a triumph of sensitivity and control, while British reviewers declared that Howard gives time travel a soul. For his remarkable work, Leslie Howard received an Academy Award nomination for Best Actor, confirming his place among cinema's most refined talents. Trivia. The role of Peter Standish was one Howard had first performed on Broadway in 1929, where it became one of his biggest stage triumphs. He personally championed the film adaptation, ensuring it stayed true to the play's emotional depth. Interestingly, many of Howard's friends noted that Berkeley Square was the role that came closest to reflecting his own personality, introspective, idealistic, and quietly haunted by the beauty of the past. With Berkeley Square, Leslie Howard didn't just act. He breathed poetry into cinema, proving that even in the age of talkies, silence, when held by the right man, could still speak volumes. Of Human Bondage, 1934.
Have you anything in mind?
Well, you see, I have my limitations. My father was a doctor. I've always been interested in medicine. And if one can't be great, at least one can be of some use to people. There it is. I want you to marry me.
If Berkeley Square revealed Leslie Howard's poetic soul, Of Human Bondage exposed his emotional depth. Based on W. Somerset Maugham's classic novel, the film cast Howard as Philip Carey, a sensitive, club-footed medical student whose life becomes entangled with a cruel and selfish waitress, played with fierce intensity by Bette Davis. The role was a daring choice. Philip was not a suave romantic hero, but a deeply flawed, painfully vulnerable man, insecure, obsessive, and often humiliated by love. Howard stripped away every trace of his usual refinement, showing audiences a man consumed by longing and self-doubt. His performance was quietly devastating, never melodramatic, but filled with raw internal suffering that made the audience ache for him. Critics hailed it as one of his most courageous and truthful roles. The New York Herald-Tribune wrote, "Howard plays Philip with an almost unbearable honesty. He makes weakness feel noble and heartbreak seem inevitable." Variety praised his superb restraint and tragic dignity, while British reviewers admired how he portrayed a man torn between intellect and emotion, and destroyed by both. And though Bette Davis's electrifying performance made her a star, it was Howard who gave the film its moral center. His calm, tortured presence grounded the drama, allowing Davis's fiery energy to burn brighter by contrast. The two created one of the most intense psychological duos of the 1930s cinema. Trivia. Howard initially hesitated to take the role, worried audiences wouldn't accept him as a physically impaired and emotionally broken man. But he later admitted it was one of the most artistically fulfilling performances of his life. With Of Human Bondage, Leslie Howard stepped beyond elegance and intellect. He became the very definition of tragic humanity, proving that his art could move not only minds, but hearts. The Scarlet Pimpernel, 1934. If one film immortalized Leslie Howard as the embodiment of wit, heroism, and sophistication, it was The Scarlet Pimpernel. In this lavish British adventure, Howard played Sir Percy Blakeney, an English aristocrat who hides behind the mask of a vain, foppish socialite by day. Howard brought an exquisite duality to Sir Percy, the silly, affected dandy who delighted in fashion and gossip, and the cool, sharp-minded hero who risked everything for justice. The Petrified Forest, 1936.
What are you looking for?
I don't know. I suppose I was looking for something to believe in, worth living for and dying for.
Get away from that door.
Do you think I'm going to let you take those people out and slaughter them?
Cut out the act, pal.
I won't let you do it, Duke.
Okay, pal. I'll be seeing you soon.
When The Petrified Forest hit the screens, Leslie Howard delivered one of the most intellectually charged and quietly heroic performances of his career. Based on the acclaimed Broadway play, in which he had also starred, the film cast Howard as Alan Squire, a disillusioned drifter and failed writer who wanders into a dusty roadside cafe in the Arizona desert and ends up changing the lives of everyone inside. His chemistry with Bette Davis, who played the young waitress Gabrielle, was gentle and bittersweet, a connection between two lonely souls searching for meaning. But what truly made the film unforgettable was the philosophical tension between Howard's quiet thinker and Humphrey Bogart's ruthless gangster, Duke Manty. The two represented opposing forces, intellect versus instinct, dreamer versus survivor. Their scenes crackled with contrast. Bogart's raw menace against Howard's calm, fatalistic grace. Critics were unanimous in their praise. Variety hailed Howard's performance as a master study in quiet power, a man who conquers with words, not weapons. The New York Times called him the soul of tragedy in modern dress. Many reviewers even noted that Howard's presence elevated the entire cast, giving the film a rare sense of gravitas. Trivia. Leslie Howard personally insisted that Humphrey Bogart reprise his stage role as Duke Manty for the film, a decision that launched Bogart's Hollywood career. Bogart never forgot it and later named his daughter Leslie in Howard's honor. Romeo and Juliet, 1936.
With love's light wings did I all perch these walls, for stony limits cannot hold love out. And what love can do, that dares love attempt. Therefore thy kinsmen are no let to me.
If they do see thee, they will murder thee.
Alack, there lies more peril in thine eye than 20 of their swords. Look thou but sweet, and I am proof against their enmity. Ah, dear Juliet, I still will stay with thee, and never from this palace of dim night depart again. Here's to my love.
In Romeo and Juliet, Leslie Howard took on one of literature's most iconic roles, that of Romeo Montague, the star-crossed lover whose passion defies fate. Directed by George Cukor, this lavish MGM adaptation paired Howard with Norma Shearer as Juliet, bringing Shakespeare's timeless tragedy to the golden age of Hollywood in grand romantic style. Howard's performance was exactly what audiences had come to expect from him: refined, intelligent, and heartfelt. He infused Romeo with thoughtfulness rather than impulsive youth, giving the character a poetic maturity that made his words sound lived in rather than recited. Though some critics noted that at 43 he was far older than Shakespeare's love-struck teenager, Howard compensated with emotional sincerity and a deep, contemplative grace that few could match. Critics at the time offered mixed but respectful praise. The New York Times admired Howard's nobility of spirit and clarity of speech, while Variety wrote that Howard's intelligence redeems the character, turning Romeo from a boyish dreamer into a man of tragic conviction. Trivia: Leslie Howard reportedly accepted the role more out of loyalty to MGM than desire, feeling himself too old for the part. Yet audiences still found his performance emotionally authentic and deeply moving. Despite its critics, Romeo and Juliet remains a testament to Howard's ability to bring intellect and sincerity to even the most familiar of roles. He turned Shakespeare's young lover into something more universal, a man who loved with both heart and mind, and in doing so made tragedy feel achingly real. Intermezzo, 1939.
It wasn't there at all that we first met. It was in Budapest, on a summer's night. They were playing the Rustle of Spring. Yes, that was you.
Anita.
But Holger,
Anita, you can't. You mustn't go.
how could you do this?
I couldn't face it. I couldn't face being without you.
In 1939, Leslie Howard took on one of the most romantic and haunting roles of his career in Intermezzo, opposite the radiant Ingrid Bergman in her Hollywood debut. The film, a remake of the Swedish original that had made Bergman a star, told the story of a married concert violinist who falls passionately in love with his daughter's piano teacher. The affair leads to heartbreak, self-discovery, and a quiet tragedy, all wrapped in music and melancholy. Howard played Holger Brandt, a man torn between love and duty, with such sincerity and restraint that critics called his performance a masterclass in emotional understatement. Rather than portraying passion with fiery gestures, he expressed it through subtle glances and delicate pauses, the kind that linger in silence long after the scene fades. Reviewers admired Howard's ability to give moral weight to romance. The New York Times wrote that Leslie Howard elevates the familiar theme of infidelity into poetry. His voice, his stillness, and his sadness make the film sing. His chemistry with Ingrid Bergman was described as electric yet fragile, and it was this unlikely balance, a mature, weary man and a woman on the brink of youth, that made Intermezzo unforgettable. Behind the scenes, the pairing of Howard and Bergman fascinated Hollywood. Bergman later admitted that she was in awe of him, calling him the perfect gentleman with eyes that could speak every emotion. There were whispers, of course, about how close they had grown on set, how tenderly he coached her through her early English lines, and how natural their affection appeared both on and off camera. Whether their connection ever crossed into real romance remains one of those tantalizing Hollywood mysteries. Intermezzo was a modest box office success, but an enormous artistic triumph. It not only introduced Ingrid Bergman to American audiences, launching her into stardom, but also marked one of Howard's last great romantic performances before his life took a heroic turn during World War II. In Intermezzo, Leslie Howard gave one of his most soulful performances, a quiet meditation on love, regret, and the things that slip away when duty wins over desire. It remains one of the last glimpses of Howard's gentler side before war and destiny reshaped the course of his life. Gone with the Wind, 1939. In Gone with the Wind, Leslie Howard took on what would become one of his most remembered and personally conflicted roles. Ashley Wilkes, the noble Southern gentleman torn between love, honor, and survival during the Civil War. Starring alongside Vivian Leigh as Scarlett O'Hara and Clark Gable as Rhett Butler, Howard's performance provided the film with its quiet center, a man embodying the old world's grace as it faded into history. Howard portrayed Ashley with a melancholic dignity, perfectly capturing the inner torment of a man bound by duty yet emotionally tethered to Scarlett. His restrained delivery and distant reflective gaze made Ashley feel like a tragic ghost in his own time, a symbol of lost ideals. Although he often seemed overshadowed by the fiery personalities of Scarlett and Rhett, Howard's subtle performance gave the film its emotional depth. Mr. V/Pimpernel Smith, 1941.
In Germany, we have discovered that a substitute can be better than the real thing.
Ah, the story of the grapes. Tell me, is it a fact that in your country there's no longer any freedom of speech?
Oh, lies.
How careless of them to have overlooked it. It's charming, isn't it? It proves, among other things, the complete non-existence of an early Aryan civilization in this country.
Silence! Get back! Who called you? Come back!
Don't worry. I shall be back.
Returning to the type of heroic role that had first made him famous, Leslie Howard starred in and co-produced Pimpernel Smith, released in the U.S. as Mr. V. In this thrilling wartime adventure, Howard played Professor Horatio Smith, a mild-mannered archaeology professor who secretly rescues victims from Nazi-occupied Europe, echoing the daring double life of his earlier Scarlet Pimpernel. Howard's portrayal perfectly balanced subtlety and courage. As Professor Smith, he appeared polite, restrained, and intellectually refined. Yet behind this calm exterior was a clever, fearless operative, exposing the tyrannical brutality of the Nazis with wit, intelligence, and daring. His performance turned espionage into something both stylish and morally compelling, showing that heroism could be clever, quiet, and deeply human. Critics praised Howard's work for its sophistication and courage. The New York Times noted that he was charming, witty, and convincingly heroic, a man who can outsmart villains with a smile. Variety called the film a clever blend of suspense, satire, and moral conviction, with Howard as its impeccable anchor. Reviewers also highlighted how Howard brought a refined intelligence to wartime heroism, making the character inspiring without resorting to melodrama. Trivia. Many historians note that Howard's work on this film contributed to his later involvement in wartime intelligence efforts, as he used his travels and status to aid Britain's cause. Spitfire, 1942, released in 1942 during the height of World War II.
But you wait. Someday, I'm going to build a plane that will be just like a bird.
Why, it is like a bird. What a strange-looking machine. What's this?
Spitfire saw Leslie Howard return to the screen in a role that perfectly combined his intellect, moral courage, and screen charisma. Howard played Dr. Michael Oliver, a British scientist working with the Royal Air Force, navigating the tension between duty, patriotism, and personal risk. His calm, analytical demeanor and understated bravery made him the moral center of the story, showing that heroism could be thoughtful, principled, and deeply human. Critics praised his performance for its sophistication and weight. The New York Times wrote that Howard brought dignity and intelligence to wartime heroism, while Variety noted that he imbues a tense and patriotic story with elegance and moral authority.
Yes,
His subtle expressions and quiet authority elevated the film beyond a typical wartime drama, making the audience feel the stakes on both a personal and national level. Tragically, Spitfire would become one of the last films released during his lifetime. Leslie Howard was a man of refined elegance and intellect, but behind the polished public image, his personal life was far more intriguing than most realized. He married Ruth Evelyn Martin in 1925, and by all accounts their marriage was stable, even if it lacked the fiery passion of Hollywood romances. Ruth was reportedly devoted and supportive, but Leslie's charm and striking presence inevitably attracted attention wherever he went. Beyond romantic intrigue, Howard's wartime travels and political involvement also stirred rumors. He frequently traveled across Europe during the late 1930s and early 1940s, sometimes under the guise of film work, sometimes for causes related to the war. Rumors suggested that he mingled with high-level diplomats, spies, and members of the British intelligence community. And some even claimed that certain actors' admiration for him wasn't purely professional. These stories were never substantiated, but in an era of secret missions and coded communications, they only enhanced his aura of mystery and allure. Despite all the whispers, Howard was known to maintain a strict personal code. He rarely let gossip interfere with his craft, and he avoided the flashy, reckless behavior that ensnared many of his contemporaries. Yet his combination of handsome appearance, charm, and intelligence made him a magnet for intrigue. Friends described him as someone who could captivate a room without speaking loudly, a man whose elegance made ordinary encounters feel extraordinary. In essence, Leslie Howard's personal life was a delicate dance between married stability, professional discretion, and Hollywood fascination. He lived as a gentleman of intellect and taste. Yet the rumors about flirty co-stars, secret connections, and whispered wartime exploits gave his life a tantalizing, spicy allure that only added to the legend. Leslie Howard's life came to a shocking end in June 1943, at just 50 years old, while traveling on a civilian flight to Lisbon, reportedly on intelligence-related duties for Britain. His plane was shot down by a German fighter, killing all aboard. Many historians speculate that Howard's outspoken anti-Nazi stance and connections with British intelligence may have made him a target. For days, the world waited for confirmation. When the British government finally announced Howard's death, the tone was somber but cautious, offering no details. The tragedy sent shockwaves through Britain and Hollywood alike. But what followed was even more haunting, questions that were never fully answered. Why was the plane targeted? Was Howard simply a victim of chance, or something far deeper? Rumors swirled that the Nazis believed Winston Churchill himself was aboard. Churchill had been in North Africa and was expected to return around the same time. Others whispered a darker theory, that Howard wasn't just an actor anymore, but a British intelligence operative. Some historians claim he used his travels and celebrity status as cover for secret missions, possibly gathering information or aiding propaganda efforts. His death was mourned worldwide. Decades later, declassified documents hinted that Howard's name had indeed appeared in Nazi intelligence reports as an active propagandist and potential spy. His final film, The Lamp Still Burns, 1943, which he produced, was released posthumously. Its title an eerie metaphor for a man whose light refused to die. Leslie Howard remains one of the most sophisticated and intelligent actors of Hollywood's golden era. From poetic roles like Berkeley Square to the heroic Pimpernel Smith and the melancholic dignity of Gone with the Wind, he mastered romance, comedy, tragedy, and heroism alike. His career bridged stage and screen, intellect and emotion, elegance and courage. A rare combination that makes him unforgettable. Even decades after his death, critics and historians recognize Howard as a cinematic icon whose artistry was inseparable from his humanity. A man who lived as thoughtfully as he acted, and whose legacy continues to inspire